this is the recipe search live demo that we did for lecture 6. Now I added a new branch. So if you go into branches, you will see this Vue branch. And in this Vue branch, I, from scratch, sort of went in there and refactored the plain JavaScript that we had into a Vue application. And I want to show you how this works from scratch, because I also want to show you a bit of the tooling that is involved there. So you go here. Now I already prepared this folder, but I want to, because it takes a while to install the dependencies, but I quickly want to, maybe I'll just go outside to show you how that starts. Yes, this is recipe search. Let's just do, let's say, so you have to install the Vue CLI before, and then you can say Vue create, and it has other utilities. But this, I think this is a very important one, because oftentimes you see this directory structure and the way that files are organized, and you don't really know how that came about. In this case, it's boilerplate that it can be created for you by these tools. So if I say live demo, right, then it will ask me a few things. Why is everything so slow? There you go. It will ask me, well, what kind of features do you want to have? And I say just the default for now, it's fine. And now it wants to install all these things, right? But we're not going to install all these things. I did this exact same thing for the other folder. So let's stop this and actually go back to this folder. And we are now in recipe search, right? So if we open recipe search here, it has this folder structure where we have a source folder. Here we will have all the components, the app components, and in this case, a hello world component, a new one. And it's a node-based workflow. So in order for us to run these things, it will transpile our Vue files to actual JavaScript files. So if I then say, oh yeah, public are the static files that we have that it will serve, and then everything that is in source will be transpiled. And here we have assets. I think assets, I have to think what the difference between assets and public is. I think assets are something that are just in the path of the components that we can use. Okay, so now that we know that this structure is generated for us, let's go ahead and open VS Code, right? And open this app.vue for once, right? So what we already see the structure that we've seen before. We have the template here, we have the behavior and script, and we have the style here. Okay. And so I already changed this. I didn't want to do that. Let's say, so usually it doesn't say that. Usually it says welcome to Vue or something, right? So, and if I want to start this up, I say npm, I think run serve, or was it serve run? No, there it is. And now we'll start the development server. This will take a while because it does a lot of steps in the background. It has to transpile a lot of things. But once this is done, it's running on localhost 8080. So if we go back to the browser and we open up, oh, nope, 8080, there you go. Then it will show us this hello world Vue.js thing. Now, if you're panicking about your feedback cycles that you have to recompile the whole thing all the time, let me put your mind at ease. You can, it has a just-in-time compilation process. You can now say, let's say, welcome to web engineering, right? And it will change this for you automatically, right? So it will just in time inject this for you. Okay, and so hello world, for instance, here, this is already a custom-made component. So if you look here, the way for us to use a component is we have to import it, right? And in our behavioral definition, we have to say which components we're using, right? If you look at the component, it has a pretty big template, and the only thing that is bound is this message here that we passed. So if we look at here we have this property MSG that is passed from the outside. So if we go back to app view, we're passing this MSG here. All right. So now, given that we have that, let's go ahead and implement our original. So if you remember, let's change the branches here. Master. Let's go from our original. We have, DOM helper and the recipe DOM, where we insert stuff, right? And do all these things to declaratively defining components and relationships between data and output. So what I have done is I have prepared a bunch of that stuff so you don't have to look at me typing all the time. So what I will do is I will here create a few more folders. So what I like to do, and this is totally up to you, this is just a structure that I like. I usually have a folder for my models, and I have a folder for my services. You can call this however you want. And usually what I like to have in components, I want to distinguish between pages and components. I feel like there's a certain difference there. However, the code itself, there's no difference. So here in the components, I will have a pages folder. And what I will also do is I will just remove this hello world view because we don't really need it. And move to trash. Okay. What I will do now is we will use the libraries that we already built. We can still use, right? So the recipe API, for instance, I can use basically as is. So I can just copy things over, and that's what we'll do. So recipe API, recipe cache, and recipe, which is the model, I will just copy over. So let's start with the model. Let's see where that is. There it is. Copy. So if I go here, model, I can't paste. That's unfortunate. Well, let's do it that way. So I have a recipe.js, and I'm just going to copy this over. This is basically the same as you see on the master branch of GitHub, right? There's no difference. Just want you to see that in a refactoring process, a lot of the things that you have can actually stay the same. Then we'll have a recipe API. Oops. Right. And we'll have the recipe cache. Oops. Recipe cache. All right. So now that we have those basics in place, let's have a look at what we need. So if you look at app.vue, what it's doing is it's loading this hello world. Well, we don't really want that hello world. We don't even want this image here, right? But most importantly, we want our appearance that we had from our recipe search. We have some design that we applied. So we have a basic index HTML with a header and a footer and stuff like that, and we have CSS. So this we can actually add to this public folder. So if I add, so here I have already an index HTML. Let me also copy paste this from the other file. It's not very exciting. I'll point out the differences to you. Right. So the differences are that I can use some template variables in here because index.html is treated as a template by the Vue transfiling process. So I can use things like these here. And then this is kind of the magic, where the magic happens, right? This is where the app.vue kind of fills in, because what we'll do is it will replace everything that is in here with everything that comes in this template, right? And this is facilitated with this main.js. So this is what main.js does. So it mounts everything that happens in app.vue within this app, right? So this is the workflow I just want to show you. And here, now we have this index.html. We also want this main.css. So I'll add another file, main.css, and also copy that over. All right, so now we have something to start with. Oh yeah, I think my server is running. So the server is running all the time, and it already tells me of errors that I have. For instance, it immediately detected that the Hello World view doesn't exist anymore. Well, let's change that. So instead of having a Hello World page, let's have a recipe search page. Recipe search. And here I will use this path syntax that has nothing to do with Vue. It's a Webpack utility. Webpack is one of the tools that underlies this whole web front end and web ecosystem. And it just says the root of source. So now we're in source. They know we're in source. It just says, go to the root of source and do something. So in this case, I go to the root, which is the root of source, go to components, and go to pages. And then I will load something called recipe search.vue. And here I will also have to have this in here, recipe search. So instead of hello world, I will load recipe search, which doesn't exist yet, but it will soon. And we also don't need this logo here. Okay. So now there's a fair question here. Do we even need recipe search if all you do here is just replace this? Probably not. I just wanted to have my own file. So that's a code organization thing that I think is more conventional than anything else. So I think I also remove things here. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into pages and create this new file, recipe search.vue. So what will recipe search have? Okay, there was a question. Can we generate components and services via the CLI? Ooh, probably. I just don't know. I'm sorry. So you can probably quickly Google that. So I haven't used the CLI a whole lot because I wanted to build things from first principles. And because of that, I don't know. So probably, I would say, but maybe just quickly Google it. Okay, so here we have, we have template, right? We have script, and we have the custom style for this particular component. Okay, and now for the template, what we'll do is we will look at what we had in, or actually, let's not start with recipe search. Let's start somewhere else, right? So let me actually just open up. Let's go back here. Is this something? Yes. So if you look at recipe search, hopefully it works. Well, of course it doesn't. But if you remember recipe search, we have this header, we have the search bar here. So maybe the search bar should be a component. And what definitely is a component is the recipe items. So every recipe counts, as its own item. So every one of these items should be a component. So let's actually start with that. I think that's a better starting point to what we have. The same thing. And let's say, let's have a new file. It's called recipe item.vue. And we'll have the same thing, have this basic structure, because here it's more clear what the template should be. Let me also copy the template over here from recipe item, or part of it actually, not the whole thing. No, actually here I can, yes. So I don't want to show everything all at once, but I can show most of it. Okay. So if you go quickly through this, we now have a binding to an object recipe of our title. We have some conditional rendering here. What that means is if this thumbnail exists, then show the thumbnail. Here's a binding on the object. If it doesn't exist, so these have to come right after each other, then show a standard image that we have saved in our internal model. And then here we have the template that we also saw before. And then we have a loop here. Here we render list elements for every ingredient in the ingredient array. Now, where does all this data come from? Well, this data comes from our behavior that we can program here. So if I go back. Okay. On this. So what I just copied in here, let's close this up. This is enough for now. I defined the contract for this component. The component's name is recipe item. The properties that it takes from the outside, the constructor, so to speak, is an object called recipe with these fields and these types. So it expects a title, thumbnail, URL, ingredients with these particular types. And once an element is passed in, then this then binds the property in a one-way binding fashion. Okay, and here this is the internal model. And quick disclaimer: if you already have just a static resource, in this case the image URL is static, you can just simply put it here. I just wanted to show you that this is how the internal model binding works. Okay, so I would say this is already a pretty good component. So now we can go back to recipe search, and we can start adding some behavior here. Oh, just a quick reminder, because I think I haven't mentioned it yet. This is okay. In the template can only have one root element, because the way that components work is that you mount the component onto a certain element basically, and then it gets replaced with this element. So it can only have one root element. So I couldn't have another article here. It will tell me, well, add a div around it, for instance, right? Just as an aside. Okay, so if we go back here, actually before we start with the template, let's start with the behavior. So this is the recipe search. We give the component a name. The name that we have here is important, and we add components from the outside. We say we want to have this component recipe item, and we will bind it to our component with this name, right? So it's for us to decide how we use this other component within our template. So here in this template, I can now say recipe item, right? However, if I say recipe entry, right, then I can also call it recipe entry. So the name of the component itself has no bearing as to how we use it in the parent component where we instantiate it. So let's call it item again. Oh. Okay, and let's move on. Then we want to have an internal model to our recipe search, and the internal model to our recipe search will be it's data. It's a function where we return the model. Will be the recipes that we want to show within the search. It will be, oh yeah, so this is actually, okay, it will be the ingredients that we want to we want to get from the search bar, and a message we want to show. So this is just a standard message that we want to show. And I see that time is progressing fast, so I will move on a bit quicker. This question might be asked. Is there a specific reason you have to use the curly brackets, or would a single bracket also work or behave differently? I think that's just a syntax. I think the dual curly brackets, I think that's just a syntax for the templates in Vue. I think that's the only way you can actually do it. So these are not JavaScript template literals, right? So if you have a template literal in JavaScript, it's like this, right? Then this is a totally different syntax. Okay. So let's go back to recipe search. So we have this data. Okay, and let's actually stay here for now. In order for us to use the recipe item, we have to import it. So again, what I will do is I will have here import and say import this recipe item thing for me. And now we are at a stage where we can do a few things. So in order for us to progress here a little bit, let me copy paste template that I have, and I would go through it with you. Oh, let's see. Okay, so we have one div here. So this is the result section, and then we want to have search. So for that, let's section, and here let's actually go and copy it from index.html. There you go. Okay. And now let's have a look at what kind of bindings we have. So let's remove this for now. This is actually a bit more advanced than I want it to be. So what we can do is we can add these items here. You can just say this is one way of just passing parameters. You can bind this recipe thing here to this object. This is how you would define an object as a parameter. But usually what you will do is you will not just use these single things here to pass this on. What you would do is you would actually have a bounded loop or some way that an object that you can pass. So we have the loop here, and then we also have the index, which in this case is our key, and then here we bind this particular element to be passed on to the components. Okay, I think we're good for now. Let's actually try it out. Let's see what's happening. Section ID search. He doesn't like something. There's no matching end tag. All right, so I messed something up here apparently. Yeah, there you go. And then what does it? Oh, yeah. So copy pasting is hard. Oh, I just never got the rest of it. Okay, so now we have the form that we wanted. Yeah, so this should hopefully compile. There you go. If you go back here and we reload this, we already see something nice, right? Let's actually add this text line center back. There you go. And now, as we type in cheese, what happens? Well, nothing happens because we haven't defined any binding, we haven't defined any behavior for the event or anything. So let's do that now. So what should happen if we submit the form? So we already have something in here that I have. So what happens is I have on submit, we prevent the default behavior and we call this function recipe search. So recipe search doesn't exist yet. We have to add it. So what we'll do is we'll have, I think it's called methods. Yes. Okay, and I will, in methods, I will add this recipe search function that I already have. It's a very simple function. We're making use of our already written library that we already had for lecture 6. And we just change the message here. And the message is something that is part of the internal model, right? If you look at our data. And while we're searching, we can say this message is this. And once we're done with the search, we can say, hey, we found N recipes. And every time we change the value of this model property, every time this message here changes. Okay. So then we have this. So we have to look here. We get this ingredient. Now this ingredient we expect to be an array because this is what our model is supposed to look like potentially, right? We want to work with actual objects in arrays instead of some serialized version. However, we can't easily bind this input from type text to an array. So we'll have to find a workaround. So what I can do here is I can say, let me see, the value here. Oh yeah, right, not value, because this is bidirectional because we can set something in there and we want to get something back from the input. This is the case for V model. So here you can say V model. However, if you now say ingredients, the way it is right now, then there will be a type mismatch. Then it will try to write the string to ingredients, but we want to have a list. So how do we deal with that? Well, there's a sort of a workaround. I don't want to call it a hack, but it's sort of a hack. But you can say, well, I'm not tying it to ingredients directly. I'm tying it to this ingredient input. Or actually, let's call it raw ingredients, whatever you want to call it, right? And now ingredients is not a list anymore here. Raw ingredient is a string. However, if you want to work with ingredients, what we can do is we can have a computed value. Let's say computed. Right? And this is where the code comes in that we had in our slides. So let's say at first we just need a getter. We just need to get the thing out. So we can say ingredients, right, is a function. And what this will do is it will go to the raw ingredient, say this raw ingredient, and it will return the structured representation. Okay. And this is it for now. I think this should already give us, let me see if I forgot anything. I forgot the import. I still need to import the, there you go. This should already give us something. Oops, parsing error, obviously. So I forgot a comma. Yes. How about now? Cool. Nope. What happened? Add service. Really? Okay, I call it services. Yes. Okay, so now if we search for cheese, searching for cheese. Okay, I might have a bug somewhere, so let's look at the developer tools. So another thing that I want to suggest you to install is Vue, which is a very nice addition to, oh, okay, it was just very slow. Which is a very nice addition to the developer console. I think it's available for Chrome and Firefox. Maybe there are other versions too, but it shows you the component structure, right? So here we have the root component, app, recipe search as many recipe items. So it shows you a more high level perspective of what's going on. But if you want to go deep, yeah, and here shows you the properties and shows you the model and all these things, right? Interesting. Yeah. And but what you can also do is you can just look into the DOM. So where was that? Okay, you can just say inspect DOM, and it will show you the generated document object model that you have. So it's a great debugging tool. Okay, so now here we have cheese, and this is all we actually want. We have cheese and eggs, for instance. Searching for cheese and eggs just takes a while. For some reason, everything is slow right now. Let me see if there are any questions. Wow, it takes forever. Anyway, it's fine. Let's go back when it's done. So there's one more thing I want to show you. There you go, cheese and eggs, found 10 recipes. What I want to do is I want to add the ability that when I click on one of the ingredients, I want to emit an event. And with this event, I want to bubble up this information of the eggs. However, because we're short on time, I'm not going to do this separately with another step. And the other step is another refactoring. And the refactoring I want to show you is based on the ingredient search that we just did. So if you look at this whole raw ingredient thing and the computed value and all these sorts of things, it's not super clean. It feels like, and especially now that we want ingredients to have this property of adding a new ingredient based on some event. What I want to have is I want to have a component that encapsulates its behavior and the interface for it. So what we'll do is we will introduce a new component that is called list search. So this I already wrote. I will just copy paste the list search component. I think. Given the time, thanks for sticking with me, by the way. So let's have a list search view. Okay. Oh, it should be list search. There you go. Okay, so what list search will do is it's a very simple component that has a label, a title, and it bidirectionally communicates a value, right? And that's the value of the input. However, it will not just give you back the string value as a normal input would do. It will give you back the object representation, in this case, an array of ingredients for you. The way we did this is by leveraging computed. So we don't need, so there's some magic going on in Vue that if you have a value property, then this value property can be used with the V model binding, the two-directional binding. And we use this by adding a getter and a setter here. Yeah, and the setter is called once new content is put into the search text, right? And once this happens, then the input event of this component is called. Now, the input event is the event that binding uses for inputs to trigger bidirectional changes and reactivity. So once we have this component, what we can do is, and that's why my copy pasting took so long, because I had to crop around something. Instead of using this hack, basically, I can just copy paste this in here. Now I have this list search inputs component that I can use, where I pass a label, a title, and I pass the V model, which is ingredients. And now ingredients can be actually part of a model, and it can be an array. So we don't need this anymore, right? And this makes this whole thing much cleaner, right? We encapsulate this behavior of serializing and marshalling within this component, right? So the internals of this is not important to us. We abstracted it away, and now we can deal with objects all the way. Right? So I think this is very nice. And last but not least, I will add. There it is. I will add an event to recipe item. So what we want is for each recipe item, we want to add the ingredient to the search bar. Now we can't directly access the search bar because we don't even know about the search bar. Recipe item is a child component that has no idea what's going on around it, right? So this might be frustrating at first when you're used to being able to access anything. However, if you think of these components as reusable and as more general purpose, then you see why this is a much nicer way of dealing with the contracts between different components and outputs and models. So what we say here is when we click this ingredient and we add this event. By the way, I want to also add some custom style here. There you go. Oops. So what I'll do here is that because the link is not the list item is not a link, I will want to make it look like a link. So I say cursor pointer and text decoration on the left. That's it. And I will also need to add this method. So when a click event on the list item occurs, we now have this add ingredient being called. And the only thing that this add ingredient will do is it will propagate this event up and will trigger a new event called ingredient add. This is an event that we can now react to in the recipe search. So here on the recipe item component, we can react to our custom event, right, by calling our own method. Okay, so we have this method now as an implement, add ingredient to search. Not a very complicated method, so I'll just copy paste this also. All right. So what add ingredients to search does is it takes the ingredient that it got from the list to the event, and it checks whether the ingredient is already in the ingredient list. Oh wait. Oh yeah, exactly. And if it's not, it will add it to the ingredient list, and if it is, it will just tell us a message. Okay, so let's save this. This should hopefully work unless I made a mistake. Looks good. No, it doesn't look good. So I missed something. Oh, I missed something very important. I missed actually importing and registering the list search. Okay, so here, while I use this list search here, there's no way that Vue automatically knows what I want, right? And here I also have to say, what did I call it? I called it list search input. List search input equals search. Comma here. There you go. I can say cheese, and we get cheese. Okay, now it's faster because it's already in the cache. And then we say, let's say cracked black pepper. It says it adds to the list, and it's actually in the list. I think that's very nice. And it's all encapsulated behavior with clear contracts and clear ways of communicating state. So I think that's great. So let's say we want to add cheese again, it would tell us it's already in the list. So I think that's beautiful. And I hope I was able to convey to you how we can implement those concepts that we learned earlier within Vue.js, and hopefully also this will help you in solving assignment 4.